Welcome everyone to another episode of our Kontext Coffee Chat, and I'm really happy to be talking to Marco Cabrera from Asocafe Taipiplaya in Bolivia today, and Ann-Kathrin Maria de Wehse de Calderon, right? Complete name, from Caraya Coffee in Berlin. And this is basically our supply chain for the absolutely delicious Bolivian coffee that's on our menu at the moment. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you both today. Thank you so much for being here. And we will start off with a short introduction.
Soy Marco Cabrera, soy parte del directorio de Asocafe y actualmente Asocafe trabaja en 4 áreas: producción, procesos de beneficiado húmedo, procesos de beneficiado seco y comercialización, de los cuales...
I'm Marco Cabrera. I'm in the management board actually of Asocafe, and at the moment Asocafe as a cooperative is working in 4 areas, which would be production of coffee, dry mill and wet mill, and like the commercial area of trying to market and export the coffee as well. Ahora yo también me voy a dar una pequeña introducción y ya, después seguiremos. I'm Ann-Kathrin from Caraya Coffee. I'm based in Germany. I lived in Bolivia 2 years, and at the moment I'm importing Bolivian green coffee from Asocafe in Taipiplaya, which is in the province of Caranavi, department of La Paz. We have been working with Asocafe since 2022, basically, when we started to talk about the crop of 2022 and also imported first time, actually last year. That was the crop which is harvested between July and October, arriving in Germany between February and March. And this is the second time we are importing from them.
For this year, yeah. And maybe you can explain a little bit how long Taipiplaya has been going for, because I was just explaining to Marco earlier, before I started Kontext Coffee, I worked for a coffee roastery in Spain, near Barcelona, Right Side Coffee. And I remember having coffee from Taipiplaya there as well. So I was really excited when I met you, Ann-Kathrin, and found out that you're importing coffee from Taipiplaya. So yeah, maybe Marco can tell us a little bit about how long they've been going and how many members they have. And and then also your story, how you got to work with them as well.
Bueno, tal vez Marco nos puede dar un poco de información de desde cuándo se está produciendo café en Taipiplaya, como un poco la historia de la cooperativa y cuántos miembros tiene, etc.
Okay. Asocafe se ha fundado en 1992 con 30 productores en esa época, donde los productores se han enfocado en vender café hacia exterior. Anteriormente vendían los productores individuales en el lugar. Entonces el objetivo era vender sus cafés, hacerle conocer sus cafés hacia el exterior. Eso es el fin, y de los cuales actualmente Asocafe se encuentra 2 federaciones, 4 centrales y más de 34 comunidades productoras, de los cuales tiene actualmente 200 socios activos y pasivos, de el cual se trabaja en Asociación de Caficultores de Taipiplaya.
Okay, perfect. So Asocafe as a foundation was founded in 1992 with only 30 producers who actually, like in Taipiplaya, coffee has been grown since many, many decades, and they were selling their coffee in the country before. But from 1992, the decision was made to they wanted to sell their coffee also abroad, to export their coffee, and in order also to get a better price for their coffee. And that's how it started, with 30 members. And nowadays, they have around 200 members, and 4 central places, which I believe you refer to El Alto. I have to ask the question to Marco. Si dice 4 centrales, ¿usted se refiere al beneficio húmedo y seco en El Alto?
No.
Y en, no.
Comunidades interculturas organizadas.
Aha, okay, sorry, okay. So when he says the association has now 4 central places, he means that Taipiplaya is a community, but around Taipiplaya there are 34 small villages. And among these 34 small villages, 4 hubs have been founded to bring the coffee to sort the coffee, etc. This is what he means by central spots. They just need to get organized internally, because otherwise everything would be very far for them.
Correcto. Y Asocafe actualmente trabaja ahora con los productores, los 200 productores socios en 4 áreas, que es producción, área de beneficiado húmedo, área de beneficio seco y comercialización. En lo que es productores tenemos áreas productivas que tenemos siguientes variedades de café: Catuayí, Catimor, Castilla, Java, Pacamara, y ahora están algo de Gesha que están implementando, ¿ya? Y en este áreas de productores, los cafés son producidos bajo sombra, manejo agrosistemas y manejo orgánicamente sin usar ningún agroquímico altamente tóxico. Ana.
Okay. Yeah, he's now already entering this like the varieties of the coffee and how it's being produced. But I think this is an important point, because first of all, it's all organic, so there are no synthetic pesticides used. And he's also saying that they are partly shade drying and sun drying in order to keep a good quality of the coffee. So yeah, they really implemented some strategies already. Also, you've heard that he started with the varieties Catraí, Catimor, Típica, Castilla, but then ultimately they are also growing Gesha. Like they are, Gesha is a bit more difficult to take care of, like of the plant. But yeah, they also experiment with different varieties in order to diversify and, of course, to get a higher income overall for all the coffee producers.
Is that the main reason for working with different varieties? Because the market is asking for it? Gesha, maybe just for some of our listeners and viewers who don't know about coffee varieties, Gesha is a really, really popular variety that has been highly prized on the coffee market, and also usually fetches a high price when producers are able to supply it. Is that the main reason, or are there also reasons like resilience to climate change and things like that they're experimenting with different varieties with?
Ahora Katia está preguntando si la razón principal por cultivar geisha es porque reciben un ingreso más alto de geisha, o si geisha tiene algún beneficio ecológico, o si es muy resiliente. Un poco para los que están escuchando, no todos saben de variedad, para que nos pueda explicar por qué ahora también han implementado geisha.
Sí, Gesha es que estamos implementando, todavía estamos en proceso de implementación. Uno es porque una variedad de calidad de lavado, y vendemos un poco más. Son cafés especiales, microlotes en pequeñas cantidades, se vende un poco más y recibimos un poco más de ingreso. nada más. Y no podemos producir en escalas grandes porque la Gesha es susceptible a las plagas y enfermedades. Y para tener escalas grandes necesitamos hacer un manejo tecnológico que los productores no tienen la capacidad de implementar.
Yeah, so thank you. He just said that this is really the only reason actually is that Gesha is a very high quality plant, even in the wash process, and that of course, they get a higher price for that. So that's actually the reason. Otherwise, it is not resilient to plagues. It's actually the opposite. It's very, how do you say, weak, weak and
susceptible to coffee diseases.
Exactly. So this is the reason why they diversify. Like they would not be able to produce Gesha on a higher scale, and also the technologies and the knowledge of the coffee producers are not enough to produce a lot of Gesha. But they are just recently implementing it and going step by step and teaching a bit about that.
Yeah. All right. So for mostly economic reasons, which is, a great thing to be at the pulse of the market, so to speak, and tap into ways of being able to increase quality and increase the prices they can have for their coffee as well.
Pues dice que es un buen motivo y también estar en el pulso del mercado, en el pulso del tiempo, lo que demandan, ¿no? Por lo que preguntan. Sí.
Maybe, sorry, ¿sí?
Sí, justamente Gesha es eso es que nuestros cultivos de esta área de producción son con abonos orgánicos, con manejo de sombra, no es monocultivo, con manejo de sombra, y los cafés que se encuentran los productores son trabajo manual, solo manual, y no utilizan algunos maquinarias para que puedan trabajar, solo es manual. Son dos aspectos que consideramos, y también estas áreas que están implementadas son certificadas por una certificadora internacional biolatina, que nos controla desde la parcela, desde la semilla, desde la implementación, desde producción, cosecha y comercialización, donde nos controla. Y para no tener algunos trazabilidad de contaminación de los químicos, y nos sanciona y no nos da las autorizaciones en la certificadora máster orgánico. Por eso nos identificamos, nos caracterizamos amigable con medio ambiente, amigable con los animales que hay y amigable con los recursos humanos que tenemos. Ana.
So another reason why you can't cultivate Gesha in huge quantities is that everything is done manually. So all the bad herbs, etc., are taken away manually. They are Bio-Latina certified. So as soon as somebody would contaminate that, they would be kicked out of the association, because Bio-Latina is actually auditing the cooperative from the grain to the plant each year several times. So it would be too risky also to cultivate many varieties which are not that stable or are a bit weak against plagues, etc. Because you can't put pesticides on them because they're bio-certified.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is basically a first-time experiment for the cooperative to see how they can manage with the Gesha variety in the market and within their organic certification as well.
Exactly. O sea, dice que es como un experimento para ver cómo puede manejar la planta de Gesha dentro de este concepto del manejo ecológico.
Sí. Estamos experimentando cómo podemos manejar y cómo podemos tener una producción. Todavía no está en escala grande.
Sí, vale.
Okay.
And maybe just to paint a little bit more of a picture, and also as a reference to the name we chose for the coffee we bought through you, Anna, you explained that the way the coffees are grown, but also processed at these hubs is basically by altitude, because some of the producers have their coffee cultivation at lower altitude, some of them are in the middle altitude area, and some of them are higher up on the slopes. So the coffee that is on the menu with us right now, we bought two coffees through you, but the first one we released, we called Taipiplaya Alto, and that is because it's grown at the higher altitudes. Maybe Marco can say a little bit about that and about the different communities and how they kind of look at the coffees that come out of those different areas of the slopes.
Yeah, so, bueno, dice que me escuchan bien todavía. He cambiado
Sí.
Ok, pero voy a cambiar porque está muy incómodo. Ok, lo que pregunta ahora, ha comprado un natural que es de más altura de la cosecha del 2022, creo de 1500 hasta 1850, y otro que es el blend, el café premium, que es de toda la cooperativa, de un nivel de 900 metros bajo el mar hasta 1600, donde más miembros de la cooperativa se ha mezclado el café, digamos. Ahora, ¿qué es lo interesante o cómo diferencian en altura? Por ejemplo, ella ha llamado este café ahora para sus clientes Taipiplaya Alto, porque es de más altura, no solo que es preseleccionado un poco mejor, porque es un natural, lo han procesado, lo han postseleccionado las mejores cerezas, sino también el microclima es muy diferente, porque en Taipiplaya hay como 3 niveles. Tal vez usted puede explicar un poco sobre eso.
Sí, en esta área tenemos nosotros Taipiplaya 3, una altitud de 900 a 1400 metros sobre el nivel del mar. 1400 a 1800, otro nivel de altitud. De 1800 hasta 2010 metros tenemos. Más de 2000 metros ya no hay, porque hay problemas con café. Hay helada, hay mucha lluvia, mucha humedad, entonces hay pudrición de café. Entonces recomendamos hasta 2000 a 2010 metros sobre el nivel del mar. Entonces, en estas áreas, que son nuestras áreas productivas, nosotros recolectamos según la época de cosecha. Cuando son zonas bajas, como llamamos zonas bajas, entre 900 a 1400, las cosechas antes ya está iniciando en esta época y a madurar los frutos, la guinda ya está comenzando a madurar. Entonces eso vamos a cosechar entre abril, mayo, junio, hasta julio. Entonces a partir de julio entra, a partir de mayo o junio entra otra bajos intermedias, que es agosto, septiembre. Y los más alturas entran a partir de finales de agosto y inicios de septiembre adelante. Entonces, de esa manera vamos cosechando. Y los productores, que son el área de beneficiado húmedo que les decía, los productores traen de sus parcelas para acopiar a este centro en forma guinda. Ana, tal vez.
Yeah. Okay. So he just explained again that there are 3 levels. Like one, they would say 900 to 1,400 meters. The second level, 1,400 to 1,800, and the very last level, 1,100 up to 2,010 meters. This is the highest point where coffee grows. And as they have the different levels, there are also different times when they harvest the cherries, because of course now, for example, he says that the first cherries are already ripening in the lower levels. Then the second level would start the harvest between June and July until September, and then the last one would enter in August, September, October, depending a bit on the altitude also. So they are separating the cherries as per altitude, as per those lots. And the natural, for example, was picked like in the last phase of 2022, let's say.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. So that's what we call the Taipiplaya Alto, and which is then grown above 1800 meters from what I understand. And the next one that we'll release that we bought through you is the Taipiplaya Bajo, which will be the mixed lots from the slightly lower altitudes, right?
Yeah.
I did notice, or let me start that way. Usually in specialty coffee, the general perception is that washed coffees are usually higher quality, more complex, and just they are coveted a lot of the times. Whereas naturals are a bit more, I mean, they're also very common, but maybe a bit more niche. And sometimes perceived as not as clean in the cup, or whereas, you know, it's also a personal preference. I love natural coffees. I think they're super sweet and interesting. But I did notice also, you know, according to the prices that I got from you, that and maybe Marco kind of mentioned it in a side note as well. Is are the washed coffees, are they less complicated to process for them, or more complicated, or how do they sit in the quality segment that Asocafe works with?
Bueno, ella pregunta ahora, los cafés lavados, en contrario a los naturales, porque también el precio de los lavados es un poco más bajo que del natural, aunque incluso a veces en el mundo de café de especialidad percibimos los cafés lavados como más complejos porque tienen más acidez. Una taza de un café natural nos puede parecer no tan limpio, o sea, algunos, ¿no? Otros sí aman los cafés naturales, pero como vemos la diferencia en precio, ¿cómo es la diferencia en el proceso? O sea, ¿es más difícil procesar un natural?
Sí, un lavado en el área 2, el lavado es recolecta de cereza, despulpado, fermentado, lavado, secado y almacenado. Entonces el café se realiza este proceso, el lavado. Pero en lo que es la parte, principalmente la parte del proceso natural, es recolecta de cereza, hacer un abollado, una limpieza de este fruto, y antes de la limpieza se realiza evaluación de grados BRICS, que estos cafés tengan mayor cantidad de azúcares, para que haya una fermentación o oxidación. Entonces, teniendo el proceso natural, lo que es el cosecha, grados BRICS y lavado en cereza mismo, después extendido en las tarimas para el secado. En el secado tarda entre 15 hasta 20 días promedio. Entonces, por eso es más difícil, porque en ese momento puede pasar algunas mohos, algunas cosas. Entonces, hay que tener más cuidado, más trabajos, y el secado tiene que ser más uniforme, y tenemos que tener radiación solar para que pueda secar. Mientras en lavado no tienes muchos problemas, porque como está lavado y no tienes el proceso es más rápido. Entonces, por la diferencia de los tiempos y mano de obra, por eso cuesta un poco más el natural que el lavado.
Okay, so I'll translate. The washed coffee comes, like the cherries are picked, the farmers bring it to the cooperative, and then the coffee is washed, is depulped, fermented, dried on African beds, and then you don't do anything else, you just let it dry. And contrarily, the natural coffee is brought to the cooperative, then they clean it, then they measure the bricks grade of it, which means how much sugar do the cherries contain. They typically contain a bit more sugar because they're grown like more in the altitude, and then they need more time to ripen, but they also control that before. And then they wash the cherries, they put them on the African beds, and then it takes like 15 to 20 days drying. And they also need to rely on direct sunlight. So it's important that, especially in the beginning, they have a lot of sun, so it dries evenly, uniform. And but you have more personal, like more stuff, so to say, involved, because they need to control during all those days that they're like moved the cherries, so no ongo, how do you say that,
no molds and fungus
can be built. Exactly, yeah. So that's why it's basically more expensive.
All right. But also, I assume from this specific setup that the cooperative has here, and also from tasting them against each other, they are of amazing quality. I mean, the Taipiplaya Alto that we have on the menu right now is a really, really lovely, high quality natural coffee. So because of all that extra effort, extra work, and extra monitoring that goes into the process, you can achieve a really, really amazing quality in that, no?
Okay, sí.
Pues dice que el natural es de una calidad súper alta y muy dulce y muy bueno. Así que está en congruencia con lo que dice, que sí entra más trabajo, pero más calidad también se nota en la taza. Eso está diciendo.
Sí. El café natural es un poco conseguir un poco más, mejor, que pueden degustar, digamos, más azúcares, más glucosa, más acidez, tratamos de conseguir, y más chocolatada, tratamos de conseguir, pero es un poco más de trabajo, ¿no? Ana.
Yeah, he just said that they also try to put the best cherries and the best lots. That's why they take it from the altitudes, because they know it has more acidity, more sugars, more glucose, and yeah.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
And maybe before we move on to some of the, because I know that I've seen the pictures you sent me, Ann-Kathrin, and from what you told me, there's amazing work going on in terms of the environment that they do at the cooperative. But maybe before we get to that, you can just quickly explain how you got to work with Asocafe and how Caraya Coffee came about.
Long story short, I lived in Bolivia between 2016 and 2018, and at that time you didn't hear a lot of coffee. But I returned, because then I came back to Germany, and I returned to Bolivia for holiday, and I tried. Like, it was amazing that I could even try, because suddenly there were coffee shops on the streets, which was new. So I tried some Bolivian specialty coffee, which was also very new, and also the price was quite high. I think only tourists and I don't know, people with a good income in Bolivia could afford that coffee, but it was really good. And so I asked where it came from, and they said from Caranavi. Caranavi is basically the region where Taipiplaya is located. So when COVID hit and everything was questionable, because I was working in tourism, I decided I wanted to work with coffee. And I actually Googled some cooperatives, because I was still based in Germany. I had the connection to Bolivia through my husband, who is Bolivian, but he had nothing to do with coffee cultivation. But he knows more or less how people are thinking, or he has that mentality, Bolivian mentality. So he helped me to pick some which we could potentially talk to, and amongst them was Asocafe. And we talked to Marco, because Marco was already in the board. He was not in the same position as he is now, but he was more responsible for commercialization of the coffee. But we talked already to him, and he sent us samples, and we also received other samples from another cooperative. But it turned out that as Marco could send us like nice qualities and also like different qualities, we wanted to vary a bit. We came back to him. We started to talk. He was also very active in asking and being available via WhatsApp, via Zoom, and via mail. Like, he was very proactive. So that was a good base to start a relationship, we said. And we ordered our first coffee from Asocafe.
That's
Great.
how it came.
Okay,
Exciting. Yes.
thank you.
Lovely partnership for sure. Yeah. I'm really interested in learning much more about a regenerative way of farming coffee, and that's one of the reasons why I was really interested to taste some of your coffees and then to work with Asocafe as well, because not only are they organic certified for all of their coffees, but they are also involved in some research projects about soil health and growing the coffee under shade trees and just having a slightly more holistic approach to the organic cultivation of coffee that goes beyond what's absolutely necessary for the certification. I would love to hear a bit more about that.
Ok, pues Katia dice que está interesada en la regeneración de los suelos y ha visto que ustedes están involucrados también en un proyecto de suelo con la universidad y que lo ven un poco más de la forma holística y hacen mucho más allá de solamente para ser certificados, sino que también realmente se meten a este tema. ¿Nos puede decir un poco más sobre eso?
Sí, justamente estamos trabajando con dos universidades, la Universidad UMSA y la Universidad Tupac Katari, sí, Universidad Unibol Aymara y la Universidad UMSA. Las dos universidades nos fortalecen con la fin de que la Universidad Unibol trabaja un poco la interacción social con las comunidades, en el cual el cuidado de medio ambiente, el cuidado de suelo, cómo podemos hacer el sistema de manejo del cultivo de café, ¿ya? Y también trabajando en la parte investigación, con el fin de que puede generar conocimientos para los productores, ¿no? La Universidad UMSA está apoyando en lo que son control de fitopatología y control de sanidad vegetal. Adelante.
Okay, so just not to forget what he said, because they're working with two universities. One is the Unibol, Universidad Aymara, and the other one is UMSA. The Unibol, these are like two projects, basically. The Unibol is more for the social interaction with the producers. So they send students to the rural areas to talk to the producers, sensibilize them about the health of the soil and why it is important to take care of the health of the soil, not only for the certification, but also from a point of view of the organical effects it has on the soil. So this is rather like a social ecological project. And then they have the UMSA they are working with, who are really doing measurements in the soil in aspects of phytosanitary health of the soil. Okay. ¿Tiene un poco más sobre lo de la UMSA que hacen?
Sí, la UMSA lo que hace es recolectar algunas enfermedades de café, por ejemplo, roya, antragnosis, cercóspora, y hacer evaluación de todos esos fitopatológicos para que podamos hacer un control biológico y orgánico. Entonces, el trabajo que nos está realizando la UMSA para que han venido doctorantes de otros países para fortalecer esos temas y interactuamos también con la UMSA que pueden traer temas de suelo. ¿Cómo podemos hacer un cultivo de café? Por ejemplo, el cultivo de café estamos asociando con sachas, que es leguminosa. Entonces, eso nos apoya en lo que es el control como repelente, de control de algunas plagas, enfermedades, y también disminuye la población de maleza. Entonces, esos trabajos se ha hecho con lo que es de la UMSA y también con la parte de lo que es Unibol, también se trabaja en ese sentido, están en coordinación conjunta. Ana.
Con unos sachos, ¿eso es como bolsas o qué has dicho?
La planta lo que es la planta, es una leguminosa, es una sacha. Se llama una planta leguminosa sacha.
Ah, okay, es una planta, okay. O sea, yeah, so the UMSA project, for example, they help them a lot by measuring also the influence like of diseases like, sorry, I don't know the English name, Roya. We have to look it up.
Coffee rust.
Coffee rust, for example. And he named 2 other diseases, their scientific names, which I can't repeat. But yeah, any diseases, they are looking at the soil and how they can prevent those diseases in an organical way. And like that, for example, they implemented a plant. The plant is called Sacha. It's like an associated plant to the coffee, which defends actually the coffee plant, like defends it from other diseases, etc. So this is like an organical way to associate other plants which could protect the coffee plant instead of just spraying some synthetic pesticide, for example.
Correcto. Correcto, está bien.
And I know that generally speaking, especially for smaller producers, taking part in experiments and things like that can be a challenge, because obviously their livelihood depends on growing the coffee. And so sometimes they can be a little bit anxious about changes like that. Is the community around Taipiplaya open to implementing all of these changes? And are they all enthusiastic, or do you have to progress a little bit more careful with implementing changes like that?
Es una pregunta interesante. Dice que ha hecho la experiencia que sobre todo con productores pequeños, estar involucrados en esos experimentos, para decirlo así, a veces les hace sentir ansiosos o se cierran ante un cambio o ante un experimento. ¿Cómo es su experiencia, Marco, en la comunidad de Taipiplaya con eso?
Los productores quieren aprender más, están buscando nuevas variedades, nuevas innovaciones, nuevas variedades. ¿Por qué? Porque aquí están mayor incidencia de plagas y enfermedades. Tenemos una variedad, está más infectando y matando a las plantitas. Entonces, por eso los productores han quedado abiertos para que algunos investigadores vengan y pueden generar conocimiento, variedades, ¿no? Entonces, eso es lo que últimos años hemos ido cambiando con los productores. Hace 5 años, otro productor muy cerrado, no podíamos entrar a sus áreas. Ahora hemos explicado que la investigación o experimentos que estamos haciendo nos va a ayudar a mejorar nuestra producción. De esa manera han entendido los productores y ahora están enfocados, sí, necesitamos investigar. Anna?
Yeah, so they made a lot of loss also through those through those diseases, because they had a huge effect on the plants a couple of years ago. So he says there was a change around 5 years ago, because before they were more closed, exactly as you say, they were a bit anxious. They didn't even want the cooperative or any investigators to enter their area of production. They didn't want it to be entered. But now seeing that they need to, like they had those effects of diseases and they need to get better, like they need to strengthen their plants in order to get the income they used to have. Like with that in mind, they changed. Like they are open now. A lot changed like in the past 5 years because they don't see another possibility of getting the plants healthy again or grow other varieties to get their income.
Right. And is that something that just happens periodically? An increase in diseases and issues like that, or does Marco see a connection with climate change, for example, when it comes to this issue?
¿Usted, Marco, cree que enfermedades o plagas simplemente pasan de vez en cuando en ciertos periodos o ve una conexión con el cambio climático también?
Hay una conexión, fortalecimiento por el cambio climático. Antes, hace 5 o 10 años, la temperatura era entre 20 y 25. Ahora la temperatura subió, está entre 28 hasta 30, 31 grados. Entonces, esos cambios climáticos que existen en las temporadas, por ejemplo, el año pasado teníamos sequías alargadas. Entonces, cuando hay sequías alargadas, hay un factor deshidratación de la planta y las plagas atacan más.
So he sees a direct correlation between the climate change. He says that 5 to 10 years ago, the temperature was stable between 20 and 25 degrees during the harvest season. Now it climbs from 28 to 31 degrees. They also have larger dry periods, which makes the plants dry. And this dryness of the soil and the plants makes that the diseases can attack them more easily. So there's a direct connection.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I imagine that going forward, I think it's great that they are working with researchers to find biological solutions to these issues so that they can keep their certification, but first and foremost, so that their ecosystem stays healthy, right? Does that impact the choices of the producers as well? Are some of them inclined to move away from coffee and maybe choose other crops to plant on their plots, or is it not yet at that level?
¿Usted cree que todas esas dificultades hacen dudar al productor de seguir produciendo café? Digamos, les hace pensar en cambiar a otras plantaciones o dejarlo del café por todas esas dificultades e inseguridades, o están bien todavía?
No, los productores actualmente conviven con café. Producen café, generan sus platas por café, hacen estudiar por temas de café. Entonces están seguros que el café les va a dar plata, les va a dar alimentación, un sostenimiento a sus familiares. Entonces, lo que están buscando los productores es investigar y nuevas variedades adaptables para este cambio climático. Ana.
There's a very nice word in Spanish, which is Convivir, which is like co-living. He just said that the producers are co-living with the plants, and I can confirm that because they live literally in, like, it's not a plantation, like it's like the jungle, let's say, and they live within, like, and next to their plants. And their basic income is from coffee. They do produce mandarins, avocados, maracuya, etc., and bananas too. But coffee is the product which they can export and which gives them better money. So at the moment, they are not yet scared. They rather see the future in coffee. They send their children to study biochemics, for example, or biology or agronomy, in order to do better coffee and in order to investigate in which varieties or processing methods they can put their time in order to keep generating money from coffee. Because at the moment, it's still their basic income, their main income.
Okay. Ana, una aclaracióncita, es que mi crédito ya está acabando, entonces va a aguantar unos...
Okay. He just said that they always buy megabytes in Bolivia.
Okay.
Now his megabytes, I think they were for an hour and they are ending. Now he's writing that there's no good network. Like,
Tell him, thank him so much from us that he made the time to talk to us. Super interesting. I can always keep going on and on and on with these conversations because I'm just so keen to learn more and to just get a picture of where our coffees come from, which he's painted a beautiful picture. And yeah, maybe maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience then in Bolivia to round things off, because as you said, you've been well, exporting out of Bolivia and importing into Germany the Asocafe coffees, and you also roast the coffees in Berlin as well, right? So what's the German market's reception of Bolivian coffee? Because it is still a bit of a rarity to see Bolivian coffee in the market. It's not like it doesn't exist, but it's definitely harder to find than some of the other coffee origins on the market.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because I get like oftentimes like polarized opinions on it. It is or, oh, I love Bolivian coffee, it's one of my favorite origins. And many times it's also, oof, we've had many problems with Bolivia in the past. I often hear from bigger importers who've had problems, etc. But what we've really noticed, we also had problems. Everyone has problems. I always say we just need to know how to solve them. And one of the biggest aspects was that they also need to gain your confidence, right? And I can't go 1 year, expect the highest quality and I don't know, without actually doing anything of visiting them. It was very important actually for Marco to get to know us, to visit us, because he has had interest of German bigger buyers, so to say, but he didn't know them, they didn't trust them, and then we just worked together with them on the problems, and I think that's the way. And we also see it as a long-term project and won't just buy one time from them and then go away or complain, because actually all the issues we've had, they were absolutely solvable, and it was like something we just needed to get a common understanding of how coffee and also coffee selling works. So they are learning a bit from us, and I'm learning a lot of them. But it's also important to have these conversations about how do you sell the coffee there, what is important to your clients. They're interested in knowing it. And as I went twice within the last year, it was really, there were a lot of talks about how we do sell their coffee here, what we do to sell it, which attributes are most important to our clients. That's also important to know. I think it has to be a two-way conversation.
Yeah. Would you say that that's the biggest challenge that you had, to find a common language, more or less, besides obviously, being able to speak Spanish, but still having that overlap in what coffee means to us in the consuming countries versus what coffee means to producers where they grow coffee and actually produce it for export. Or what would you say were some of the main challenges in building the relationship so far?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges was maybe to get an understanding of quality, because many producers never have tried their own coffee. They don't have any sensorical understanding or haven't made any career in the sensorics. There are young people who studied like the microbiological thing of the fermentation and so on. But in the end, you evaluate it in the cup. And it still happens that I go and people tell me like, when do you buy more coffee from us? Or they think I'm going to buy, I don't know, 2 containers. But then I'm also a solopreneur, and I always explain that I'm looking for quality rather than quantity. And then, of course, for the quality, they also get better money. This is something Marco understands very well, I think, because he has opened his mind. He's also talking to many younger people in Bolivia, roasteries, for example, and he just started producing, and he has like high ambitions, so to say. But when I talk to elderly people, especially, there's that gap between they don't have an understanding of quality, but who am I to judge this? Because I'm focused on the quality. They are focused on getting more outcome from their coffee plants. And in the past, outcome meant quantity, but now the times are changing a bit, and it means also quality. And I think you have to find a good mix of both, because of course we can't buy all the coffee from 200 members. But the important thing is to see that we are absolutely willing to pay for quality. And this is still like, I think it's an ongoing work, which we are doing.
I think, I mean, I imagine because over Christmas you had a crowdfunding action, didn't you, to raise some money and bring a sample roaster back to Bolivia so that Marco and the cooperative can actually roast samples and have the producers taste their own coffee, maybe for some of them. Yeah, for the first time, from what I gather from what you just said. And I mean, that was an amazing project, first of all. But I think that this is something that I have come across, well, not for the first time since I've been working in coffee. I think that discrepancy between what coffee is and represents on the consumer end of the value chain. So this beautiful, fragrant, aromatic drink in a cup, and what coffee means to producers where it's grown, right? Because at that end, it's an agricultural crop. It's a cherry that grows on a tree. And that gap between what it is here and what it is there, plus then any cultural differences that also can create disturbances in the communication, can't always be easy to navigate, I imagine. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. But still, I'm so like, I took the roaster to Bolivia, yes, the sample roaster, and then we roasted and we tasted some coffee. And there was one younger woman who had never like done any sensorial evaluation of the coffee, but she could already say which one was more bitter, which one was more sweet. And I think this is like many people in Germany who are doing like for the first time a cupping or something, they can't even distinguish between acid and sweet and bitter, which is not a problem at all. We are just not used to describe tastes in our food or in our drinks. But I found it amazing that she was so decided to learn, and like in her first cupping, we agreed on our favorite cup, for example, the one we liked most. Like her opinion was the same as mine. So I think there is potential, and now Marco also sees the necessity. I think it's good that he's in the management board, because there were many elderly people, nothing against older people, but he sees the necessity of doing those sensorial analysis as well. And he actually is working together with a Q grader now. Like in the name of the cooperative, they can't have their personal Q grader all the time because of the financial constraints, yes. But she's quite young as well, and she just started to be a freelancer. She's a Q grader, so she's willing to help them kind of also because she's doing some quality control together with them, and I think it's a nice kind of work, nice ambient of working together.
Mm-hmm. It sounds great. And Marco said himself, right, that they all see the necessity to adapt to the changing situation. And we spoke about environmental factors, but I guess the same is true for the market, right? And he definitely seemed like he could see that very clearly. Maybe just as a last question, because I just got out of another call where we talked about the age structure in different coffee growing countries, and you mentioned elderly producers. Generally speaking, out of all the members of this cooperative, what would you estimate the age average is? And do they have well, is it a difficult situation that maybe they're growing older, or are there actually young people moving in after and taking over the reins of the coffee gardens?
Yeah, I think in Bolivia it's a younger average age probably, because we mustn't underestimate the motivation which is behind like all the specialty coffee thing. It's quite new for Bolivia. They are just finding ways to export the coffee also through digitalization, etc. So what happens is maybe there are socios, like members of the cooperative, who already grown old or like 60, 70 years old, but their sons and even their grandchildren are now taking over and revolutioning a little bit their coffee growing system. This is also reflected in our newest import now, because of course I can't say like the 200 members might have an average age of 35 to 40 years, not too old, I would say. But the micro lots we are importing are from younger producers. Like one is 26 years old, the other is 27 years old. And their fathers, like their parents and also their grandparents, already are members of the same cooperative, but they are now highlighting their coffees or finding new ways by selling us those micro lots. And yeah, also experimenting a bit. They don't have a lot of space to experiment, because one of those producers just said to me, my coffee is my capital, so I can't do crazy fermentations without the guarantee that they are there's coming out something good. But we are just talking of washed and natural processed coffees, nothing funky, nothing too crazy, but actually micro lots. That's why I can understand why Marco said they are seeing their future there, because I think it's also a big opportunity for Bolivia, because actually a lot of those good lots are staying in the country at the moment. They do have a lot of roasteries, of coffee shops, which just have been created the last 5 years. So it's like the start of the specialty coffee scene in Bolivia.
That sounds very promising, because that was one of the takeaways from that other conversation. It seemed to me like when there is a scene for this kind of coffee within the country itself, there is more incentive for young people to actually want to work in coffee, right? And to want to take over the family plantations, rather than not seeing a future in this really laborious work, right? And moving away from the country into the cities to find other income chances and possibilities. So that sounds very encouraging, very, very promising. All right, well, I don't want to keep you much longer. Just thank you so much for making time and also facilitating a conversation with Marco. It's always really exciting and interesting to hear more.
She is actually very correct, because I just went to La Paz in January, and opposite to, like, my last stay was mainly in Taipiplaya in July. We mainly stayed with the coffee producers. We got to know the process. Then in January, I mainly stayed in La Paz and in El Alto. And it's like, actually, you see it, you can touch it, you can see so many coffee shops, specialty coffee shops in the city, that of course it makes a lot of sense what you say. When they go studying in those cities and they see it, they can see that people are actually spending $3 for a cup of coffee in Bolivia, which is a lot in their actual currency. Then it's more motivating, of course, to produce good coffee. Yeah.
Good. I'm really glad to hear it, because it is beautiful coffee. And so it sounds very exciting. I think, it sounds like resilience is being built as we speak through partnerships like yours with Asocafe. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you for taking the time. Well, we're looking forward to working with you going forward as well. Please do say thanks to Marco as well. It was a real pleasure meeting him, and yeah, I'll send you the file as well.
I'll do. Okay, thank you.
Enjoy your afternoon in Berlin. Speak to you
Thanks.
soon. Thank you, Ann-Kathrin. Bye.